Welcome to Drinking with Authors. I am your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today is the very brightly lit Bo Lay.
I know. I don't know what's going on. It's very sunshiny today.
There's a lot of sunshine happening this morning. And our guest today is Farastein Mokwenye. Welcome.
Woo!
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Let's talk a little bit about what we're drinking. So in some of our Drinking with Authors swag, I have, it's lemonade, and it's been a while since I did this, but I took a shot of Skunk Brothers Lightning and put it in the lemonade because it's moonshine and that's how you have to drink it. So I'm starting my day with some moonshine and lemonade. It'll either wake me up or it'll end badly. One of the two. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it's totally fine.
You might have to take a nap later.
I am down to take naps. I'm a big fan of naps. Bo, what are you drinking?
I have an iced coffee that I made, and it is very good. And it's, I think, my third today so far.
Oh, wow. Speaking of people who are going to crash very soon in the afternoon. Farastein, what are you?
Well, since I'm not feeling exactly too well.
What are you drinking today?
I said, since I'm not feeling exactly too well, I wouldn't want to be taking any alcohol. So I have just a table water, aquafina here in Nigeria, cold water. To chew my body down.
So you know what? I have water too, because if you're going to drink, you should drink water anyway. I'm a firm believer in that. Hydration. Okay. So for the audience that doesn't maybe know what you write, what do you write?
Well, Tales of Jideofor, my first book, it's a fiction. It's historical fiction based on the transatlantic slave trade history. So that's about the long and short of it. Yeah. It follows the life of the main character, the protagonist Jideofor from Illah, where I'm from in Nigeria, in southern Nigeria, down over to the Caribbean in Jamaica. So in a sense, it's a tale of love, of history, of esoteric themes like dreams and the afterlife, because those areas really fascinate me. So readers who are fascinated with all of these themes and topics would really get to enjoy Tales of Jideofor.
Very, very cool. So when did you write this? When did you do your first book?
It was published in 2022 by Tamarind Hill Press in the UK, but I actually began writing as early as 2020 during the lockdown.
So this was a lockdown writing. We talked to a lot of authors that either did a bunch of books or started in the lockdown. So let's go pre-lockdown. Let's go before the lockdown. Did you do writing? Was that something you wanted to do before, or was it
before the lockdown? Yeah. The general idea for Tales of Jideofor had begun as a short story which had entered into a competition, Goge Africa, a television show about tourism and African culture. So in 2019, they had a short story competition whose theme was our heritage. So I'd entered Tales of Jideofor, a short story version. So from that, in 2020, the following year, during the lockdown, having so much time, and it just happened that at the very start of the lockdown, I was working in a farm, one of the largest farms in southwest Nigeria in Yoruba land. So I had so much time, so much space, and being in the culture so deep in the heartland of the jungle, it felt very inspiring for me. And I had about 9 months to do all of my writing. So Tales of Jideofor was born.
Wow. That has got to be really fun to be there and absorb the environment like that. Because a lot of times we write about things that are, like I wrote about a story that was based in Boston before I actually went to Boston. I was Google mapping. It was very weird trying to okay, where is this thing? So I'm saying the right stuff. But then when I actually went to Boston, it was interesting because I realized my story would have had a different feel to it. Not that it was bad or it was wrong or I got in, do your Google research on things. But I found that had I been in the environment, there's just a feel when you're in environments.
True.
You look at them or watch movies and stuff, you go to any big cities or you go to other countries, you have a different feeling. Like I'll tell you, I got the opportunity to go to South Africa about yes, before the lockdown. I got to go to South Africa, and wow, it was just so different. I was down in Cape Town, and like you're around animals. Like that's not something you have really in the United States. I mean, yes, you can go to the forest and stuff, but literally you're walking past
by zebra.
Exactly. And you're like, what is this? That, like, we went to lunch and there was these giant walruses literally on the dock. We walked past to go to lunch. And I was like, if I looked at pictures, it would never have communicated what this is like. And I went to the Cape of Hope, I think it's called, like the most
Cape of Good Hope at the very tip of Southern Africa.
Yeah. Can't even describe. You can't even describe what that's like, looking at that water, looking at that place. So that is amazing. So how much time did you spend in that environment?
I spent 9 months at the farm.
Oh my
it was a contract project. So immediately the lockdown began. That was in Nigeria. The lockdown began around March or so 2020. So from March down till about October before I go back to Owerri, where I stay. So in all of those months, I had basically, because myself and my colleagues were utility managers for the farm. So from the very setup to facilities, installation, and all of those stuff, we were there from the very onset of the farm activities and processes. So of course, it was quite active in terms of the farming and agricultural activities, but I had a lot of free time, especially in the night, in the evenings, so much space because the farm was about 300 hectares.
Oh,
so
wow.
I felt really immersed in traditional African society. Because Tales of Jideofor, again, is a story of African history, African society before the advent of the Europeans, before the advent of the colonialists and all of those stuff. So it was really, really inspiring being in such a true traditional setting, untouched, sort of like virgin land, I would say. So it really got me inspiring. I did most of the writing there at the farm, but I would say I put the very final full stop on the project. That was in April the following year, 2021. Then I started the hunt for a publisher. Then eventually I would get to meet Tamarind Hill Press. Luckily for me, I had known the editor and the CEO of my publishing group since way back as 2017 or so, when I used to write short stories on Facebook for my friends and acquaintances from all over the world. And again, lucky for me, as if by, should I say, fortunate luck, because my editor, Kimon, is originally from Jamaica, which the second half of the story, because Jideofor's story begins from Illah in Nigeria down over to Jamaica. And I've never actually been to Jamaica, so I had no idea how the culture was. Just as you're saying, I had to do a lot of Googling and stuff. But having an editor who's originally from there, the way I'm originally from Nigeria, it created sort of like a blend and interwoven relationship where the story was put in its proper light and perspective for readers, as readers would get to see it too. So
I love that. And that has to help so much too, though, because like I said, you can write things, but if you're not from the area, you can get little nuances of how things are said or things are done, even though you know the words and you can see the picture. Like, you see this great picture of this place and you talk to your editor and they're like, nobody goes there. That's a tourist trap. Everybody goes to this place because they, and
or like, we don't say that, we say this other thing, and you're like, but I read it on Google Translate, and they're like, no, it's wrong.
Oh, Google Translate. Okay, writers out there, listen to this warning. Do not use Google Translate because it's Google Translate can help if you get sent some things to get an idea, but I find Google Translate is right about 65% of the time. 65% of the time it has the words, but it's not how somebody would actually say it there.
Because it doesn't have different.
The slang or we don't quite say it like in the US. One of the things that's really interesting, because I lived in California and I lived in Wisconsin, which is the very north, right? So all the way out west, all the way out north and stuff. And so in the north, they say pop instead of like soda. They say, do you want to pop? And I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
You're like, what is that?
But in California, they say, do you want a Coke? And they don't just mean Coke. You go, yeah, I want a Coke. And they go, okay, what kind? Like they'll ask you what kind of soda you want.
A Pepsi?
Yeah, you go, yeah, no,
Yeah, you know the funny thing?
A Coke, and they ask what kind. And then down south, though,
sorry for cutting you short. The funny thing is that in Nigeria and in much of West Africa, like Ghana as well, we don't for soft drinks. We say mineral. So when I go to the store, I would say, I want a mineral. For someone like you who's a foreigner, you'll be like, what am I talking about? What's mineral? But the seller understands that. That's the slang here in West Africa. Mineral means soft drink. So that's the term here in Nigeria, which is way different from anything you guys have in the US.
Exactly. And so if you came over here and said that, everybody would be like, what are you talking about? But it's so weird because I think that's true even in like Africa as a country. You go to different areas, right, as a continent, but you go to different areas and you find that they say things differently or you have different slang. And if you're not asking somebody who lives there and not only lives there, but lives in the culture that you're talking about, then you're gonna have it wrong in the book. And then people from there read it and go, what are they talking about? That's not a thing. Okay, Bo, ask some questions. I know I'm monopolizing the whole thing as per usual.
Yeah, she always does that. How did you approach research of like the more like back in the day things that were like not, modern? How did you approach that?
Did we momentarily lose him? You gotta love internet connections, but that is a beautiful picture of a whale jumping in.
Yeah, I love it.
In the water. I wonder if that's him. Hopefully he popped. Oh, there he is. I think he's coming back. Okay. And we lost him.
Oh.
We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back with Drinking with Authors. Hey, listeners. You know me, Eric Lance. You're just listening to me in the podcast that you have. But guess what? I'm doing something new.
Yeah, she's joining me, Mark Muncy, the author of the Erie, Florida book series in Erie, Appalachia. And we are hosting a new podcast called Erie Travels.
Woo-woo! Erie Travels, which covers things like ghosts, cryptids, weird stuff, UFOs, men in black, all kinds of fun things that people talk about, and I'm sure you've discussed with friends.
Yep, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platform of choice, or find us at erietravels.com and join in the fun and all the spooky goodness.
And of course, Mark, what do we always say?
We'll see you on the other side.
And we're back, and we have him back. Okay, so Bo, ask your question again.
How did you approach research of since it's about like the African slave trade, how did you approach research on that topic?
Well, again, the internet, Wikipedia, free knowledge, sort of. But again, since Tales of Jideofor begins from my own history from Illah, because I'm from Illah, that's in Western Igbo land. Again, I'm from there, so I do get to go home. I do get to listen to the stories from my elders, from my grandparents, because I've always really been interested in my history, in my background. Luckily for me, where I'm from in Illah, we have a very rich history that traces all the way back to all of the myths and legends in Igbo land. So all of these themes really interplay in Tales of Jideofor, because, of course, I'm writing sort of, I wouldn't say exactly direct experience, but I'm working with individuals whose life really interplay with all of this. My grandparents, people from my homeland who really understand the land, the cultures, the traditions, and all of those stuff. Then for, of course, the history of the transatlantic slave trade, I had to do a lot of research, a lot of reading I read through the memoir of Illah. I don't know if you folks know him. He's one of the first Igbo writers. His memoir about his life was published in the 18th century, I believe in 1785 or so. He was one of the pioneers, one of the strong forces against the slave trade at the very end, tail end, was one of the forces who was instrumental in ensuring that the slave trade would be ended in the British colonies, I believe in 1803 also, at the start of the 19th century. So he was very instrumental. And he was an Igbo writer, writing from the time period Tales of Jideofor is set in the 18th century. So I got to enjoy and follow his story because I got to understand how life was in Igbo land in that time. Of course, I have no idea how life was in Igbo land in the 18th century, 200 or so years ago in the past. So having his work excellently written, and of course, other research I had done on how slaves were treated, how the Middle Passage was, what eventually happens to the slave when they land over in the New World, in the Caribbean, in North America, and all of this stuff. So it was really interesting for me because I've really been interested in all of this stuff. In fact, Tales of Jideofor has this, before I'd written the short story for Goge Africa in 2019, I'd actually written a Facebook post in 2017, kind of like a short story-ish stuff on my Facebook feed. And it got a lot of reactions from my friends from all over the world. So I got to see firsthand that a lot of people are interested in this topic, not just Africans like myself from West Africa, but Africans in diaspora, folks like yourself in the US. A lot of people from diverse cultures, they're really, really interested in exactly how the slave trade, as dark as the history may be, how exactly it had played out, how instrumental it was to the history of that time, and how it still interplays in our life today. So it was really interesting for me having to do all of those research because I've really, just like I said, I've really been fascinated about that time, place in history. I believe it's not just instrumental for Black folks like myself, but for white folks like you guys and people from all over the world.
I think it's vital that we learn histories. And, you know, it's interesting because I'm reading another book right now, and one of the, it's a fantasy book, but they have historians in it, right? And literally the historian right now in the book, because there was a takeover in an empire, I'm going to do my best to describe this, but he basically is gathering everything. And there was a previous empire, but they're wiping out any historical history of that previous empire and rewriting the history of how things went down for official records all over this land. And I was listening to this because I take my dogs for a walk and I'm listening to it. It's a fantasy book and it's just, you know, about this evil emperor, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that like literally hit me, probably harder than anything's hit me in a book in a long time, is I went, this is how they do this. Like how much of this has happened in the past where they go back and depending on who's in charge and who has control of the narrative, they rewrite what they want communicated as to how this thing went down in history. And the only way to keep that going is to, you know, the truth is by generational retellings of stories. And lucky for us now, more and more books coming out because they can't rewrite your book, right? Like they can't retell your story. And I think that whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I think it's so vital because especially historical fiction, there's so many truths in what we're talking about that you can glean that even if they go change the official history books on how something is said, they can't change the stories that are communicated, which is so vital to me because I'm listening to this and I think I literally re-listened to that section like 5 times going, wow, that's really screwed up, but that's how it's done.
That's how it actually happens in reality.
Yeah, it's terrifying that that's a reality, but you don't think about it like that until it's presented that way. Anyway, okay, tangent again. Bo, back to your question. Sorry.
You said you learned a lot from your grandparents. Is there anything that they said that really surprised you?
Well, my grandparents were African traditional worshippers. Unlike my parents, like myself, I was raised Catholic, Roman Catholic. So again, going home, because in Nigeria, actually from the Igbo tribe where I'm from, there's this culture of going back home. It's quite similar to the Jewish Passover in a sense. So every year, Igbo diaspora, wherever they may be in Nigeria, in the US, in the UK, would usually come home for Christmas. In Nigeria, there's a term for it, Onwa December. It means in Igbo, it means the month of December. So it's like the month of return of Igbo people in diaspora. So again, my parents would usually take us down to the village to see my grandparents and all of the old folks in the village. And one peculiar thing that struck me was how different, but very similar to the Catholic faith, my ancestral beliefs were. Let's say, let me give you like an example, a sighting that was quite surprising for me as a young child growing up. Us Roman Catholics, we do believe in this court of saints that have the ability to intercede for you in prayers. Something similar exists in my own traditional Igbo beliefs and understanding of the universe and nature. There's this belief that your ancestors, your great-grandparents, like my grandparents are dead now. There's this belief that from here, I have a means to communicate with them. And they, from wherever they are, have a means to interplay in my life. Just like the saints have the ability to intercede for you in prayer in the Catholic Church. So something similar is in existence in my own traditional Igbo beliefs. That my ancestors, my parents, my grandparents have not abandoned me. That death is not the end. It is just like a bridge. And when, for each and every one of us, a time would come in our own life when we'd have to cross that bridge to the other side. Like for the last session, the last part of the book, because the book is divided into 8 parts. The last part is titled Life is But a Dream, which is part of the philosophy I live by, because it's a philosophy very richly deep in my Igbo tradition, which the belief is that the reality we see that is so physical, this chair, this glass, are not exactly as physical as we assume them to be, which has a basis in quantum physics as well. So the understanding is that all of this stuff I can see is a part of my consciousness. So it's, in a sense, it is similar to a dream. When I die and my consciousness would leave this realm onto the next realm of the afterlife, it will be akin to a dream. It's like when you have a dream, and Tales of Jideofor is peculiarly a Tales of Dream. There are a number of dream scenes in the story. Dream scenes are so important in the story that they are written in a unique blue ink in the story to differentiate them from everyday reality. So just like that session represents, life is but a dream. It's like a part of my own traditional Igbo spirituality that I want to give to Africans and people from all over the world, from different cultures, like an intake into our understanding of life and how we should fare. Since life is but a dream, just like the poem goes, row your boat gently down the stream. There's no need to be in a hurry. There's no need to force. There's no need to cost, because all of this stuff that you think is so important are not exactly as important, because when you die and cross that bridge, you'd realize, oh, it's not as important as I thought. Just like the way you'd wake up from a scary dream and you'd be relieved and, it was all a dream after all. For most of us, it should be a similar thing. So the life that was so serious is not exactly, it's kind of like a divine comedy, sort of. So that's one understanding I got from my grandparents, from my traditional African view of spirituality that is within the pages of Tales of Jideofor, that I really believe would connect with, especially Africans in diaspora, who in a sense have lost that aspect of our culture. That aspect has been severed from the root, and it's something I want to use Tales of Jideofor as a medium to connect Africans in diaspora back home, sort of, yeah.
I think that's like a really good point, in that our beliefs are not much different, no matter where we're from. So it kind of, everyone's connected, and it's
in the
nice.
End. And Tales of Jideofor is already connecting me, because in March I had gone to see the High Commissioner of Jamaica in Nigeria in Abuja. That was in March, just some months ago. So just as I had envisaged, he's already carrying out the mission of trying to connect Africans in diaspora, people in the Caribbean, African Americans, British Africans, all over the world. It's bringing black folks back home to a new telling, a new perspective of our African culture, unlike it has been told several years in the past. This is a new first-hand perspective, because I myself, I was born and brought up in Nigeria, deeply immersed in the Nigerian culture, telling the story to Africans in diaspora and to people from every culture. So I know it is something that would really engage with them in some spiritual way.
What has been an interesting reaction from a reader? Like your most, like that comes to mind to you as like a, wow, that was like a crazy moment.
Well, the most craziest one I would see was that because Tales of Jideofor follows, and eventually in Jamaica, Tales of Jideofor would meet Mary Jane, where his love story would begin on the second part of the story in Jamaica. And lo and behold, one of my readers who's American, but she's originally from Haiti, there are so many themes in the story and so many scenes that are almost exactly like her life, almost point to point. So she had messaged me all the way from the US because I'd met her on Instagram. And she was like, I was telling a story of her life and I had no idea. It felt as if the story of Mary Jane within Tales of Jideofor is just like a retelling of her life. And you really got the two of us to connect really, really deeply, really, really deeply. Then again, another reaction I got that was really engaging for me was from a Ghanaian lady. She lives in Canada now. She's a nurse in Canada. And lo and behold, although I got to reach her through Instagram, I had no idea who she was originally. She was born and brought up in Owerri, where I live now. So it was really strange. All the way she's in Canada now, a Ghanaian, not actually a Nigerian, but she was born and brought up in Nigeria, not just in Nigeria as a whole, but born and brought up in the city that I was born and brought up in Owerri. So it was really striking. In a way, Tales of Jideofor had connected her back to Nigeria, back to Owerri, where she was originally born in. So these two experiences are the two that, from the top of my mind, that really connected to me. Because in a sense, Tales of Jideofor is a spiritual book in a way to me, because I was really deeply immersed in the culture, not just the culture, but the spiritual understanding of Western Igbo people of Illah, where I'm from. So having to see all of these coincidences, all of this serendipity, my editor is from Jamaica, I have folks who so it's really, really interesting for me. And every day I get more news like this, more coincidences, and more stuff of this nature. It's really, really interesting. So
it's more of that everyone's connected thing.
Muted. What are you working on right now? I was muted and I'm sitting here talking. It's fine. It's fine. I'm going to drink some more lightning. It's okay. I'm good. Anyway, what are you working on right now, my friend?
Currently, I'm working on the audiobook for Tales of Jideofor. Will soon be available. I've been working on it. It's being done by Dr. Etim Eyel. He's director of Nigerian Nostalgia Project. Another lock of serendipity on the part of Tales of Jideofor. All of these folks I'm meeting, I had no idea. I just meet them online, just as I've met you folks online, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and platforms like that. So he's the director of Nigerian Nostalgia Project, and is working with me currently for the audiobook. So that will be available by the end of this month, I believe, by God's grace. So that will be really interesting because he has a really nice voice. He's Nigerian, from southern Nigeria, where I'm from. So the names are not exactly a mouthful for him, but I wanted somebody like him who's an American, which is nice American. He has this nice. He sounds almost like Morgan Freeman to me, and I love voice, deeply rich African voice like that. So having someone with that rich voice tell the story is really pleasing for me. And of course, his platform being the director of Nigerian Nostalgia Project, which connects Nigerian news and history from all over the world, because he has like a following of Africans in diaspora, quite a substantial amount. So all of those platforms, I believe, will really be helpful for the journey of Tales of Jideofor for me. Then currently also, I'm also working on the follow-up novel, because Tales of Jideofor is part of a trilogy. Tales of Jideofor is based on the past. The next book, the follow-up book, is titled Once Upon a Lifetime, and that will be based in the future. Then eventually there will be a last book, a third book, which will be based on the present, about my own life, because Tales of Jideofor is sort of like my incarnation in the past during the era of the slave trade. Then the follow-up book will be my incarnation in the future after World War III in a dystopian world. And eventually the third book will be, everything will tie in, all of the different themes and all of the stuff in the novels will tie in the third novel, which will be about my own personal life as Farastein Ehis Mokwenye.
So when is book 2 coming out?
And book 2 will come out when I'll be in the UK for my master's next year, because I'll be traveling January to the UK for business management at the University of Law, Birmingham. So I believe being in a new environment, being in a new culture, because I've never really been to Europe, being in a new culture would really inspire me in a new way. So I tell the story differently in a new way, because Once Upon a Lifetime will follow the life of Illah, a girl now, not a teenage, but still a young adult setting, a coming of age book, sort of. So when I'll be in Europe, when I'll be in the UK for my master's, I believe I'll have ample time and new inspiration, new knowledge that would be inputted into the storytelling for Once Upon a Lifetime. So next year, and again, I'll be closer to my publishers who will be in Durham, about 3 to 4 hours away. So they'll have more opportunities for collaborations, for new inventive ways, for marketing, and all of those stuff. So I believe you guys will really enjoy it next year when Once Upon a Lifetime will be done. I'm already working on the manuscript though in Nigeria already. So when I would have enough time to do the editing and all of those stuff the following year, in 2024, when I'll be in school.
That is super exciting. So, has that been just sort of awesome when that book finally came out? And like, there's a whole feeling when that happens. What was that for you?
I remember it was published on the 29th, if I'm correct, of July 20. That's about a year now, 2022. So it was really exciting because in my family, I'm not sure there's anyone who has ever published any book. So it was really interesting, really, really interesting for me. Again, I had no idea how to go. Everything just happened by serendipity, sort of, by fortunate luck. Everything just went in order as it should be. I got to meet my editor, did the editing. I was keenly a part of the process of the editing. Really interesting for me because I've never had that experience before. So it was really, really, really exciting. I've never felt anything exactly like that. Really, really exhilarating, sort of. Really, really interesting for me.
So what was that like also when you got the book in your hand?
For the first time.
Yeah. I feel like, you're published, it's great, but when you get that
but when you get
book,
the book.
What was that like?
Really nice. Really, really nice. Really nice. I got home, I showed it to my parents, but it was sent via DHL from the UK down to Nigeria to me here in Owerri. So I went into town to the DHL office in Owerri. I got it, took it home, showed my parents. And I have a mentor in Owerri. He's an entrepreneur, he's a pastor and a preacher. So I gave to him a copy as well for him to bless the book and all of it. It was really interesting because I got a lot of prayers, a lot of pats on the back, a lot of hugs. I really felt as if I had achieved something really, really meaningful that would help not just my own self, but Africans and people from different cultures all over the world. So it was really, really exciting.
I think that's amazing. That is so awesome. Okay. Bo, one more question from you, and then we're doing literary briefs.
Okay.
How has marketing been for you?
Quite a new experience because now, Tales of Jideofor in a way is an introduction into marketing and sales generation for me. My ultimate plan is to go into entrepreneurship. I have a few business ideas. That's the reason I'm traveling down to the UK for my master's because I'm originally a chemical engineer. I studied chemical engineering at the Federal University of Technology, Owerri in Nigeria here. So diversifying into business, into publishing, into writing, it's all new for me. So luckily for me, I have individuals, good folks who are guiding me step by step. So the journey is very, very much enjoyable for me. But for the marketing and sales, it's been really interesting for me. And I would say for me, since I'm coming from sort of like a new background, I'm an engineer, I have this free hand of creativity that the average traditional publishing and their marketing inroads do not exactly have. Like my focus now has been on social media all this while. Again, my publishers are a small press in the UK, so they don't have enough tentacles to do all of the marketing for me, but they have a good following in the UK where they are based. So on my own part, I've been searching for means or platforms. Thankfully, I've met good folks like you guys who have given me this platform. And over the months since the book has been published, since July last year, I've been on a number of platforms. I was on a television show in Barbados. That was some weeks ago. So all of this is very interesting, having to be on television, having to be on podcasts, to be on Instagram lives and all of this stuff is really interesting, really. And I can see how they would really give me the basis for when I'll be an entrepreneur, because I already have the business plan of what I would do. It's to market, because the business idea would market African attires and jewelry to Africans in diaspora. So again, writing a book like Tales of Jideofor, I believe I'll be introduced to Africans in diaspora, especially in their communities and groups and forums. So all of that will interplay when I would move over to business and sell them clothes and sell them jewelry and sell them all that stuff from Africa that they don't have the access to because they are away in diaspora. So really interesting for me, interesting times. I'm just going along with the flow.
Very cool. Okay. Rapid fire questions. Do literary briefs. We got theme music now. It's fine.
Yeah, apparently.
We keep getting thrown off because it's new theme music. It's totally fine. Okay. So the first question is, what is your favorite book of all time?
My favorite book of all time. That's a big one there. You're putting me on the spot because I like books on psychology. Robert Greene is one of my best writers based on human behavior and psychology. But then again, I really enjoy fantasy like Harry Potter and fantasy of that nature. Well, my favorite book of all times. I would say Dan Brown, though. Dan Brown, and that would be the Da Vinci Code, because I really enjoy how it interplays mystery with spirituality, with history, with art into storytelling. So I would say Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code would really be up there. But again, just like I said, you're putting me on the spot because I have a lot of other selections I would like to see up there. I really do enjoy Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power, because I love his storytelling, the way he interprets, because I'm really interested in history. And the way Robert Greene does his historical analysis of human behavior, as he had done in 48 Laws of Power, with history, with legends from Greek mythology, Roman mythology, is really, really interesting for me. So, but I would take Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code.
I love that. Okay, what about your least favorite book? A book you did not like?
Did not like.
Yeah.
A book I didn't like. Oh, let me think of a book I didn't finish. No one's really coming to mind yet. Of course, I wouldn't really want to name names and point fingers, but there was a book I'd read about the Biafran history, the Biafran War in Nigeria, quite similar to Chimamanda's Ngozi Adichie's book, Half of a Yellow Sun. But the way this writer had done, the book was presented to us because for my short story, for Goge Africa, I was the third runner-up. So it was like an event, a ceremony, gift giving, and all of those stuff, prize presentation. So along with all of the prizes we had won, we were given free samples of some books of fiction. And I got this book. I've forgotten the name exactly. But the storytelling for me was just all over the place. So she did justice again in the descriptive scenes, but there was it's in a way, when you see stuff like that you don't really like, because then I was still writing Tales of Jideofor. It really helped put for me in perspective how to tell a story in the chronological order where it would follow. Now, not just jump all over. Maybe this scene we are here, the next scene we're 10 years away in the future, and you can't really connect. So the book was not exactly following in a chronological manner, in a chronological order. So I didn't really enjoy it. I've forgotten the name now at the moment, but on the top of my mind, that's the book I read of recent that I didn't really enjoy. Not really because it wasn't an excellent book. It was an excellent book in terms of the description. She really has a vivid mind, but she just jumping all over the place, and I didn't really get to enjoy that. I want something if I can really follow back to back and follow the pages accordingly.
Okay. What about where's somewhere you want to visit if there was not any like obligations, but you could magically just go there? Where's a place on planet Earth you want to go visit?
There are a lot of places though. But I've always wanted to tour Africa, and I've always wanted to see Ethiopia, the country Ethiopia, because for us, especially in Black Africa, it's almost like as if the Zion is like the cradle of African civilization, sort of. So I would love to see what Ethiopia holds. I've never been to South Africa like you've been, so I would want to see all of the views, like as I've been told, of course. The South African climate is very different from what we have in West Africa. It's more of a Mediterranean type climate, so having that in Africa would be really interesting. And there are a number of places I'd want to see in Africa: Kenya, Zanzibar, all of the resorts and all of this stuff. But again, if as I'm getting to live my life, getting to travel, I know very well I would want to tour Africa. I want to see homeland, which I'm from, which I'm born in. And again, there are a number of places in Europe I would love to see. Of course, I'm Roman Catholic, so I would love to see Rome and all of the churches and cathedrals in Europe. I love to go to Israel and see the Holy Land and all of the stories I've read about in the Bible and see the areas where this stuff is not just stories on paper again, but actual, real, physical history. So
I love that. Okay, Bo, questions?
You said you like fantasy. What genre do you not like?
A rom-com in a way, romantic comedy. I love love though. Let's not be let's not be as if I'm hating, but it just seems as if it seems as if that genre is successful and it's quite easy to market, sort of. So there are a lot of books based on themes surrounding romantic comedy, romance, and all of this stuff. And so sometimes you just see too much, and it's like eating the same meal every day. That's not really interesting. Well, again, I don't really get to read. Yes. I don't really get to read a lot of fiction since I'm really interested in history, and history cannot, again, be fiction. History has to be true. It has to have some basis in reality, has some basis of truth. So I'm really interested in books of history, books of legends of the time past, books of human psychology is one reason I enjoy Robert Greene, and human nature, how people think, how people perceive one another. Really, all of this stuff really intrigue me because they tend to have direct practical practice, unlike rom-com. If I'm not really in a relationship, yeah. So I just see that.
I know you said you like Dan Brown. What did you think about the movies?
The movies.
Yeah, like Da Vinci Code. What was the third one called?
Inferno, I believe. Inferno. Yes. Yeah. I really do enjoy, because again, one reason that led me to Dan Brown were the movies originally. So movies have a lot of people watch movies than they are readers to read your book. So for Dan Brown, I would say, a lot of people would complain like they did for Harry Potter that the movies are not doing exact justice to the storytelling in the novel. But again, these are two different fields, and I have dreams for turning Tales of Jideofor into a movie. In fact, at the very moment, I'm speaking to an executive producer in Nigeria with the African Magic Group. So if Tales of Jideofor again in the future would become a movie, it will not be exactly as it is in the book. And I understand that, because these are two different fields of storytelling, if I can use that word. So I really I've come to understand that script writing is way different from fictional writing, from non-fictional writing, and all of this stuff. So for Dan Brown's books and his movies, I really, really do get engaged with them. The movies are really, really nice, especially the Da Vinci Code, because I'd seen the movie first before I'd gone back, interested in the movie, and gone back to find the novel to read. So I really do enjoy movies like that.
Those are my guilty pleasure movies. I love them so much. I watch them all the time, over and over again.
I always enjoy movies with themes of that nature. This grand themes is the reason I believe my favorite sci-fi movie of all time would be The Matrix. because I like
Oh.
grand ideas of that, grand ideas, grand checking, paradigm shifting ideas, just as Dan Brown is trying to do with, of course, someone like me who's Catholic, bringing the idea that Christ could have a child, or this mystery surrounding the Holy Grail and stuff like that. These are grand ideas that I really do engage, because I believe of course, these stories are in a way unforgettable because they are quite hard to fulfill because of the themes they focus on. These are grand themes that reoccur over and over in our lives.
Very cool. What about if you could change into any mythological kind of creature, what would you change into?
I'm a Sagittarius, so I was born in December. I don't know. But let me think. Definitely not a vampire. I don't like those vampire, those those romance stories surrounding vampires. I believe there are too much of them out there in the world already. So I would I would say no to a vampire or a werewolf. I'd rather be a human being than be a vampire. But let me think. Mythological creature. Do gods from the legends count? Like Zeus and Jupiter? Then I'll
Sure. I mean, it could be anything. Pick one.
Then I'd definitely like to be one of the gods from the legend who lived in a different realm and could interplay with life here.
Very cool. Okay. I'm Bo. I'm going to give you the final question. I'm going to ask one more, and then you get the final question. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, what is your idea of, like, what do you want to achieve as a writer? Like, if you had one way to describe what you want to achieve as a writer, what would it be?
Well, for me, because the reason I read, because my own writing is stemming from my reading. I usually write articles and books that are similar to stuff I've already ingested in reading. For me, I want to do storytelling that would open the minds of people, give them new ideas. Like, is the reason, just like I said some moments ago, is the reason I'm interested in grand ideas like Dan Brown did with the Da Vinci Code and movies like The Matrix did. I really enjoy when you read a story and it just takes you into a mythological, not just mythological, sort of like a realm that is only within the pages of those books. So it just feels, because books to me are like portals into a new universe, sort of. So I want my storytelling to be a medium in which people, millions as they may come in different shape and sizes and colors, would have this portal to always learn all of this knowledge, all of these new insights. Again, just like I said, for my storytelling for Tales of Jideofor, I had to read the memoir of Ola Daikwaino, written about 250 years ago, but still it's preserved in paper, and I can delve into that universe of the transatlantic slave trade, of how it was, how life in West Africa was in that day and time, just because it's preserved in paper. And that is what I want my storytelling to do as well, to be like a magical portal through which people could travel the world. Like, of course, I'm sure you folk have never been down to Nigeria, but when you read Tales of Jideofor, you'd feel as if you're in the heartland, in the jungle somewhere, somewhere in southern Nigeria, just because of the descriptive storytelling I've done. And I would want to continue in that path for Once Upon a Lifetime, which should be set in the future, about 250 years in the future, in a future way different from now. I would really want my readers, again, for the book to be a portal, to have like a view into how life in the future may be after World War III, or how would life be when humanity no longer lives on the surface, because that's that's part of the theme for the story. So I just really want to do storytelling, even though it's fiction. It is not exactly fiction. There are a number of truths in it, just like I've done with Tales of Jideofor, for where you see a number of our African spiritual understanding of faith, of dreams, of the afterlife interplayed in the story. But it is fiction, but of course, it's not exactly fiction to somebody different like me who's from that part of the world. I really truly believe that the world is like a dream, and that when I die, I would wake up to the higher realms of the world, to the afterlife. These are truths to me, but in the book, they are presented as fiction. So I really want to do stuff like that, just interplay, putting truths here and there that really resonates with me in my storytelling, and I know would carry on for generations to come.
I love that. Okay, Bo, final question.
What is your advice to new authors?
New authors. I'm quite new myself, so my advice would be just if you've discovered your gift as writing, you just have to keep on your path. That's one thing. Is the reason is one truth I've discovered about reality, that those who often succeed are not exactly the talented or the gifted, so to speak, because each and every one of us are gifted in our own unique way. But from my observation of life, I've come to understand that it is those who keep at their dreams, it is those who strive on that really get to succeed. So, of course, the journey of writing is quite a daunting one. I'm sure you guys would agree. But if you've discovered that this is your life gift, this is because your gifts are not exactly meant for you. In my understanding of life, you are supposed to share them with the world, just as it is in the parable of the talents in the Bible, in the Gospels. If you should keep your talents away and refuse to invest, when the homeowner comes, which is death, when you will die, you'd come to understand that the opportunities of your life, you did not get to utilize them. You did not live the life of your dream because of your own choosing. You kept your gifts and talents preserved away from the public. But that shouldn't be the goal. Instead, when you get to give out these your gifts, you get blessings in return, just as it was in the parable as well. The one who had 2 multiplied to 4, and so on and so forth. It often happens like that as well. When you discover your talent, just as I've done with writing, you find that you're interested in other stuff. Just like I found that I'm keenly interested in business and in marketing and in sales generation. The more you learn about yourself, the more you continue to learn. It's to keep like a process. You keep breaking boundaries, and your circumference would continue to enlarge and expand. So that would be my saying. Just keep at your gift. Just when you discover your gift, there'll be a lot of noise, background noise coming, but listen to your own voice. You already know the path. And if you keep at it, no matter how long it will take, you would eventually reap your fruits.
I love that. Okay, so shameless self-promotion time. How do people find you on social media? How do people find your books?
I'm Farastein _Ehis. That's EIHEEZ on Instagram. The book Tales of Jideofor is available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes & Noble, on most of the major platforms. It's even available on Walmart, available on eBay, available on so many. Just Google up the name Tales of Jideofor. It's available on all of the platforms that readers regularly get their books from. Then on Twitter, I am. What's my Twitter handle again? I've sent all of this stuff. At Twitter, I am Waoba _Illah. I'm from. It's sort of in Igbo. It means Prince of Illah, which is where I'm from. So Waoba of Illah. That's NWAOBA _Illah. Illah is ILLAH. So those are my handles on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm not quite active on LinkedIn as much and all other platforms, but I'm most active on Twitter and especially on Instagram. I'm most active on Instagram.
Very cool. And your books, they can find it anywhere, correct?
Anywhere, yeah, on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, and all of the major platforms they get the books from, especially folks in the UK.
It was wonderful having you on the show with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The honor was mine, having to meet all of you.
Awesome. It was our honor as well. So this has been Drinking with Authors. I have been your host, Erica Lance. Don't forget to like, subscribe, review, all of those things. And we will see you next time.